A black SUV sits in the dark, engine off, lights off, parked on the shoulder of Route 9 like it was never there. Inside, two men, watching a silver sedan 50 yards ahead, watching the woman standing beside it, watching her check the road. Once, twice, three times. They have been watching her for 11 miles. They are not in a hurry, and then, headlights. A truck slows down. A man gets out, big, calm, moving like someone who has never once considered that a dark road at night might be a place where things go wrong. Inside the SUV, one of the men exhales slowly. Who is this guy? Not a question. A problem. The man changes the tire. 8 minutes. He doesn't rush, doesn't leave, just stays there, in the open under the headlights, completely unaware that 30 yards behind him, two men are deciding whether he is an obstacle or a complication. He is both. He just doesn't know it yet. The woman drives away safe. The truck pulls back onto the road. The SUV sits in the dark for a long moment. Then the driver picks up his phone. One number, two rings. We have a problem. By morning, that problem has a name. By morning, that truck is parked in a driveway on a quiet street in Cedarville, and the SUV is parked right outside it, waiting. The first thing you need to know about Elroy Bennett is this. He stopped. Not because he had to, not because someone was watching, not because he expected anything to come of it. He stopped because there were hazard lights blinking on the shoulder of Route 9, and a person standing beside them. And Elroy Bennett had never once in his adult life driven past a situation like that. That is where this story begins. Not with the money, not with the black SUV, not with the men in suits who would come knocking on his door 6 days later with their polished shoes and their careful pauses designed to make names land like dropped stones. It begins with a man who stopped his truck on a dark road because the lights were blinking and someone needed help. 8 minutes. That was all it took. 8 minutes that changed everything. But we'll get to that. First, Elroy. Elroy Bennett was 35 years old. He lived in Cedarville, North Carolina, in a one-story house with yellow siding that had faded to something closer to cream over the years. White trim. A covered porch with 2 chairs. One newer, one older, the older one his father's. A front yard with an oak tree his father had planted when Elroy was 4 years old, and which now threw shade across whole yard by noon, and in October turned the color of something burning beautiful. He worked as a maintenance technician at the Cedarville Community Recreation Center, which was a long title for a man whose daily work involved unclogging drains and replacing busted light fixtures and convincing the ancient HVAC system in the gymnasium to behave like something from the current century. He was good at his job, not because it was glamorous, because nothing about it was glamorous, and he showed up anyway. Every morning, with attention, with patience, with the understanding learned from his father and reinforced by 35 years of living that things break when you ignore them. Every morning Elroy was up before the sun, not because he had to be, because he chose to be. 4:55 every single morning. Coffee, 2 scoops, black, nothing else, taken out to the front porch, and he would sit in his father's chair and listen. Birds first, then wind in the pine trees, then the distant sound of the highway waking up. The world coming back to life in layers, quiet to loud, and Elroy always made sure he was there for the quiet part. His house was modest. His parents had built it. His father with his own hands, and 2 men he trusted, back when Elroy was 4 and had no understanding of what a mortgage was. Elroy had grown up in that house, left for 5 years to maintenance contracts in Nashit. Came back when his father got sick. Stayed when his father passed. Some people called that sacrifice. Elroy called it home. Cedarville was not a complicated town. Population just under 90,000. One main street with a diner, a hardware store, a pharmacy, a barber shop, and a flower shop that also sold lottery tickets, because apparently those 2 things went together. 1 high school, 2 elementary schools. 3 churches within 4 blocks of each other, which caused exactly the tensions you would expect, and also somehow made the annual 4th of July cookout the best attended event in the county. People knew Elroy here. Not famous, not important, just known. The way a town knows the man who fixed the gymnasium floor 3 days before the state champion game and worked through the night to do it, and never mentioned it to anyone. The way a town knows the man who drove Mrs. Patton's groceries home every Thursday for 2 years after her hip surgery. Without being asked, without making a thing of it, that kind of known. It was a good life, small, quiet. His. He was not looking for anything more. The Wednesday it happened was unremarkable in every way until it wasn't. Elroy finished his shift at the rec center at 6:45. He had replaced 2 ceiling tiles in the women's locker room, fixed a latch on the supply closet that had been sticking for 3 weeks, and spent 3 minutes tracking a dripping sound that turned out to be a leaky pipe behind the east wall. Something he'd need until the following Tuesday and the right parts to properly address. He signed out, said goodnight to Tanya at the front desk, walked to his truck. A 2009 Ford F-150, dark blue, 212,000 miles, maintained with the same attention he brought to everything else in his life. Route 9 heading out of Cedarville toward the county line was not a busy road at that hour. That was what Elroy liked about it. 20 minutes of quiet. Trees on both sides, the occasional farmhouse set back from the road, lights on in the kitchen windows. A water tower in the distance with Cedarville's painted on the side in letters that had needed touching up for 5 years and would probably need it for 5 more. He had his radio on low, something instrumental. Nothing with words. Elroy preferred music that didn't ask anything of him on the drive home. He saw the hazard lights from about a quarter mile out. Orange blink, orange blink, orange blink, off to the right shoulder. Steady rhythm. A silver sedan, relatively new clean lines, the kind of vehicle that belonged in a city parking garage, not on the shoulder of a county road at 7 in the evening. Elroy slowed without thinking about it. There are people who drive past situations, and there are people who do not. Elroy's mother had told him when he was 9 years old, told him once, clearly, and never needed to say it again, that Sengjing's measure of a person was not what they did when people were watching. It was what they did when no one was. He pulled over, put his hazards on, cut the engine, stepped out into the warm October night. The woman was standing beside the rear passenger side of the sedan, arms crossed, not from cold, holding herself, the way people hold themselves when they are keeping something in. She was young, late 20s. Blonde hair in a ponytail that had started the day neat and lost that argument hours ago. Blouse and slacks that said professional meeting, long day, something that had put her far outside her element on a dark county road after dark. The right rear tire was flat. Not just low, flat. The rim nearly touching asphalt. She looked up when she heard his boots on the gravel. For 1 second, her whole body tensed. Then she looked at him, really looked. The fast calculation people make when they're deciding something quickly from limited information. Whatever she decided, her shoulders came down. Not all the way, but some. Flat tire, Elroy said, not a question. Naming the thing, yes. Her voice was steadier than he expected. I noticed it about 2 miles back. I probably should have stopped sooner, but She stopped. Yes, flat tire. You got a spare? I've never actually. I know it's there. Elroy nodded, walked to the trunk. She clicked it open. The spare was there. A compact donut, not full size, but it would do. The jack and lug wrench were there too. Factory equipment still in the original plastic wrap. Brand new. Never used. He pulled them out and went to work. The way he always worked? Methodical. No wasted motion. Located the jack point, felt along the frame for the reinforced spot, positioned it correctly. Cranked it up. The woman stood a few feet away. She wasn't on her phone, which Elroy noticed. Most people reached for their phones in uncomfortable situations. Something to do with their hands. She just stood, watching. And that nervous energy, it was still there. But it wasn't directed at him. It was directed at the road, at the darkness past the tree line, at some distance that had nothing to do with the tire. She kept checking the road behind her. Both directions, not once or twice, over and over. Elroy said nothing. He loosened the lug nuts, removed the flat, sidewall damage, which hinted she'd been riding partially delated for a while before it fully gave. Mounted the spare, tightened the lug nuts in the star pattern his father had taught him when he was 11 years old. Lowered the car, final torque check on each nut, 7 minutes, maybe 8. He stood up, wiped his hands on the rag from his back pocket. "You're good," he said. "That's a compact spare. Don't take it on the highway and keep it under 50. Get the tire replaced in the next day or two." She was looking at him. Something in her expression had shifted. The wariness was still there, but something else had joined it. But some things that looked like she was trying to understand a person she hadn't expected to meet. "Thank you," she said, and she meant every syllable of it individually. She reached for her purse. "No," Elroy said. She looked up. "I'm not taking money for this. I want to. I know." He picked up the flat and put it in her trunk for her. Closed the trunk. "Drive safe." He walked back to his truck. She called after him. "I don't even know your name." He paused, half-turned. "Elroy." He got in his truck, pulled his hazards off, checked the mirror. She was still standing there, one hand resting on the roof of her car, watching him pull away. He drove home, made a sandwich, watched 20 minutes of the evening news, fell asleep in his chair. Simple. Done. Over, he thought. Thursday morning, 4:55, coffee, porch, pine trees, highway in the distance. Norm. Elroy finished his coffee, rinsed his mug, got dressed, and went to get in his truck. That was when he saw it. Parked at the curb, across the street, 2 houses down, a black SUV, brand new. Too clean for this neighborhood. Too deliberate. Not the kind of vehicle that ended up on Elroy's street by accident. Windows fully tinted, engine off, no one getting out. Elroy stood by its truck door, looked at the SUV the way he looked at that leaking pipe, trying to understand what kind of problem it was before deciding how to approach it. Then he got in his truck and drove to work. In his rear view, 2 blocks later, the SUV pulled out and followed him. His hands tightened on the wheel. Something quiet and alert turned on behind his eyes. He went about his day. The SUV parked on the street outside the rec center. He could see it from the storage room window. Just parked. Just sitting. He checked it 3 times through the course of the morning, and it did not move. At lunch, he walked to Ridgefield Hardware. He hadn't planned to. He'd brought his own lunch that day. But he needed to think, and he thought better moving. When he came out of the hardware store, the SUV was across the street. Different spots. Same vehicle. He checked the small dent on the front passenger wheel well, and the partial mud on the rear bumper. Same vehicle. No question. That night, he sat on his porch and looked at the SUV, parked 3 houses down. Not close enough to be aggressive. Close enough to watch his front door. He thought about calling the non-emergency police line. Then he thought about what that call would sound like. A black man in Cedarville reporting a car legally parked on a public street. He thought about the questions that might get asked. Whether someone would. Whether if fucking came, anything useful would happen. He went inside, locked the door, called Dwight. Dwight Sybee had been Elroy's closest friend since the 7th grade. He was 37, a project manager at a distribution warehouse outside of town, and he communicated primarily through direct skepticism and a particular sound in his throat that expressed opinions his mouth hadn't gotten to yet. "There's a car outside my house," Elroy said. "What kind of car?" "Black SUV. Been following me all day." A pause. "Following you?" "Yes, Elroy. What did you do?" "I changed a woman's tire last night." The pause this time was longer. "That's it?" "That's it." Dwight made the sound. Somewhere between a laugh and a groan. Only you would change somebody's tire and end up surveilled. "I don't know what it is yet." "Then what do you think it is?" Elroy looked out the window. The SUV sat there, patient as stone. "I don't know," he said. "That's the problem. Friday, the SUV was there. Saturday, the SUV was there. Never too close. Never aggressive. Always present, like a shadow that had developed opinions about his schedule." Elroy had almost walked up to it twice. Both times he stopped himself, because whoever was in that vehicle was patient. And patience in a situation like this usually meant they were waiting for something specific. He wasn't going to give them whatever that was before he understood what was happening. Sunday morning, he was on his second cup of coffee when a different vehicle came down his street. A town car, gray. Moving quietly, trying not to be noticed, which was difficult given that it was a town car on a block where the most expensive thing was Elroy's neighbor's 2019 Silverado. It parked in front of his house. Two men got out. The first was in his mid-50s, custom-tailored suit, not department store. Silver hair. The particular posture of a man who had spent years in rooms where decisions were made and had been the person making them. He moved with deliberateness. Nothing about him was accidental. The second was younger, early 40s. Quieter in his bearing. The kind of quiet that was not calm. The kind that watched. They came up the porch steps. Elroy did not stand. He sat in his father's chair and watched them come. "Good morning," the older man said. Smooth, practiced. The voice of someone who had thought carefully about how to begin this conversation specifically. "Mr. Bennett, that's me. My name is Reginald Cass." He paused the designed pause, the one meant to create space for a name to land. "I represent the Harmon family. I believe you recently had an encounter with one of their family members. A young woman, Wednesday evening." Route 9. Elroy looked at him. Said nothing. Cass continued. "Her name is Claire Harmon. She's the daughter of Douglas Harmon." Another pause. "You may know the name. Real estate and development, primarily. He's a significant figure in this state." Elroy had heard the name, the way you hear names that belong to a world that has nothing to do with yours. "Miss Harmon made her family aware of what you did for her that evening," Cass said. "Your kindness, your willingness to stop and help someone in a difficult moment. The Harmon family takes things like that seriously. They'd like to express their gratitude." He said the last word carefully, like a door being opened slowly so as not to startle whoever was on the other side. Elroy looked at him for a moment, then at the younger man who had not introduced himself, then back at Cass. "No thank you," Elroy said. Cass blinked. Just once. But Elroy caught it. "Mr. Bennett, I don't think you quite understand the nature of—" "I understand fine." Elroy set his coffee cup on the porch railing. "A woman had a flat tire. I stopped. I changed it. 8 minutes. I didn't do it because I expected anything so." He picked his coffee back up. "No thank you." Cass looked at him, the practiced smile recalibrated. "I'd encourage you to at least consider." "I have," Elroy said. "Just now, in real time." He held Cass's gaze. "A good Sunday, Mr. Cass." A beat. Cass nodded, professionally, pleasantly, the nod of a man filing a locked door away to try later, and turned and walked back down the steps. The younger man followed without a word. They got in the town car, drove away. 3 hours later, the black SUV was gone. Elroy sat on his porch for a long while after that. He told himself it was over. He almost believed it. He went to work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. The street stayed clear. No town car, no SUV. He started the week cautious and ended it nearly Thursday morning, 1 week exactly since Cass had stood on his porch. Elroy came outside to his 4:55 coffee. Oak tree, pine trees, highway in the distance, empty street. He had just started to let his shoulders down when he heard the front gate. The woman from Route 9 was standing at it. Not the town car, not the SUV, not Cass, just her. Jeans and a gray pullover. Hair down this time. No purse, no briefcase. Just keys in her hand and something in her face entirely different from the woman on the roadside. En route, she had been scared, contained, holding everything in. Now she just looked tired and purposeful. She saw him on the porch. Didn't wave, didn't call out, waited. Like she knew she was on his property and it was his call. He walked down the steps, opened the gate, stepped back. She came through. They sat on the porch. He did not offer coffee. She did not ask for it, told she hadn't come for pleasantries. She looked at her hands for a moment, then at him. "My name is Claire Harmon," she said, "but you probably know that already." Mr. Cass told me. I didn't ask him to come here. Okay. She took a breath, steadied herself. I need to tell you something, the real version. Not what Cass told you. She paused. What he told you wasn't wrong exactly. But it wasn't complete. Elroy waited. Claire looked at the oak tree, at the street, then back at her hands. At that night on Route 9, I wasn't driving home from work. She said it flatly. No performance in it. I had a bag in my trunk. I was not planning to go back. He was still. My father has been in negotiations for years on a large development deal. It stalled, financially and legally both, and his solution. She stopped, started again more carefully. He told me he'd arranged for me to spend time with the other party, socially, as a gesture of good faith. She looked up at Elroy directly. He didn't use the word I'm thinking right now. But that's what it was. A long quiet on the porch. A car passed on the street. Neither of them looked at it. I packed a bag, Claire said. Told my father I had a work conference. Got in my car and drove. Somewhere on Route 9, the tire went flat. She paused. The SUV that followed you this week, those were not my father's people. Not at first. The man my father is negotiating with sent his own people after me when I left. They were on Route 9 that night, behind me. Elroy was very still now. And then a stranger pulled over, she said. Spent 8 minutes changing my tire. Stood there in the open the whole time. She shook her head once. They couldn't approach me with someone right there. They had to drive past and keep driving. She said it plainly. No drama, just the fact of it. You were there, she said. And because you were there, I got away. The silence that followed was the particular kind that happens when something true has been said out loud and both people understand it needs to exist for a moment without being touched. Elroy looked at the oak tree, thought about the woman on the road, the way her body had tensed when she first heard boots on gravel, the way she kept checking the road in both directions, the shake in her hands that was not from the October air. He had noticed. He had told himself it was none of his business. He had been right that it was none of his business. He had been wrong about what it was. The SUV that followed me, he said. Whose was it? My father's people eventually. Once he understood what had happened, that I'd left, that the other party's people had followed me. He sent security to locate me. I'd already reached a hotel in Greensboro. But they'd picked up your plates on a traffic camera. They found out who you were. A pause. He wanted to know what you wanted. I didn't want anything, I know, quietly. That was the part he couldn't understand. Elroy looked at her. Cass came here to offer me something. Yes. I know. I didn't authorize it. What were they planning to offer? Money. Whatever they assumed you'd want. She shook her head. That's how my father operates. Everyone wants something. It's a matter of finding out what. She met his eyes. But you said no. Not challenging. Genuinely asking. Elroy thought about the honest answer rather than the because I didn't do anything worth paying for, he said. I stopped. I changed a tire. If that has a price, it becomes a different kind of thing. Claire looked at him for a long moment. Something in her expression settled, like a weight that had been held at shoulder height, finally being set down. I've been trying to figure out how to find you, she said. Not through my father, not through Cass, just myself. To say what happened. She paused. What you did that night, you didn't know what you were walking into. You just stopped. Anyone would have. She shook her head, slowly, certain. No, she said. I was on that road for almost 20 minutes before you came along. 3 cars passed me. He had nothing to say to that, so he didn't say anything. The morning was moving on. The oak tree's shadow had shifted. You're safe now? He asked. I'm working on it. I have people I can stay with. A lawyer. Things aren't settled, but I'm not in immediate danger. Good. She stood, straightened her pullover, seemed to say something else and decided against it. Walked to the steps, stopped. Elroy, he looked up. I'm sorry you got pulled into this, she said. Whatever my father does next, whatever he offers, you didn't ask for any of it. He looked at her steadily. No, he said. I didn't. She nodded, walked down the steps. Through the gate, she closed it behind her gently, which, for some reason, he noted. Walked to a rental car parked a block away and got in and drove away. Elroy sat in his father's chair for a long time. He thought about 3 cars, and 20 minutes, and a fourth that stopped. He thought about his mother's voice when he was 9. The specific afternoon. What she'd said and why and how he'd never needed her to say it again. He thought about the SUV on Route 9. The people inside it, watching from the dark, waiting until someone showed up who made what they were planning impossible. He had just stopped. He had no idea. He picked up his coffee cup, gone cold, drank it anyway, because the day was still there. The oak tree was still there. Cedarville was still there. And Elroy Bennett still had a job, a leaky pipe to address, and a life that'd been simple and entirely unremarkable until 10 days ago. He went inside, washed his mug, got ready for work. But on Route 9 that evening, driving home with the radio low, Elroy glanced in his rearview mirror. Empty road, no headlights. He held his eyes on the mirror a second longer than necessary. Then he looked back at the road ahead. The dashboard light was warm. The trees stood quiet on both sides. The water tower in the distance read Cedarville in letters that needed touching up. Some things, he thought, you drive past. Some things you can't. He had never yet figured out how to tell the difference before he stopped. He wasn't sure that was a flaw. He drove the rest of the way home in silence, and the road behind him stayed dark, and he told himself that was fine. He almost believed it. 3 weeks after Claire Harmon sat on his porch and told him the truth, his phone rang on a Tuesday evening. Unknown number. Area code 99, Raleigh. He looked at it for 2 full rings. Picked up. Mr. Bennett. Older voice. Measured. The voice of a man who had spent decades in rooms where every word cost something and had learned to spend carefully. My name is Douglas Harmon. I believe we have some mutual context. Elroy set his fork down. I'm aware of who you are, he said. Good. That saves time. A brief pause, not Cass's designed pause, not a tool, like a man's deciding how direct to be and deciding on very. I'd like to meet with you. In person. At your convenience. Why? Because I owe you something, and I intend to address it. Elroy looked at the weather report on the television. Rain Thursday. He'd need to check the rec center roof drainage before then. I told Mr. Cass I wasn't interested, he said. I know what you told Cass. Something shifted in Harmon's voice. Not warmth, acknowledgement, Cass. A silence. Where, Elroy said. He told Dwight about it the next morning. They stood in Dwight's driveway before work. Dwight with a travel mug. Elroy with his hands in his jacket pockets. Early morning, cool on everything. Dwight listened to the whole thing without interrupting, which was unusual, and when Elroy fished, Dwight was quiet for a moment. You're going, Dwight said. I'm considering it. You already decided. I'm considering it. Elroy, you decided before you called me. Dwight took a long sip of his coffee. You're telling me because you want someone to know where you're going, not because you want my input. Elroy said nothing, which was confirmation. Dwight looked at him over the rim of his mug. Man worth how much exactly? I didn't look it up. Beat a lot, Elroy. I mean a lot. Like your whole street times several thousand. That's not relevant. It's a little relevant. It's not. Because whatever he has doesn't change what I did or why I did it. It doesn't change what I'm willing to accept for it, which is nothing. Dwight studied him. Then why go? Elroy thought about the honest answer. Because as I want to look at him, he said. And I want him to look at me. And I want us to understand each other clearly. Dwight absorbed this for a moment. That's either very wise, he said, or very stupid. Probably both. Dwight pointed at him with the travel mug. You call me when you're done. I will. I mean it. I know you mean it, Dwight. The drive to Raleigh took an hour and 40 minutes. Elroy wore dark pants and a clean green button-down, collar pressed, because Loretta Bennett had raised him to show up presentable to things that mattered, even when he wasn't sure the thing mattered much. The truck was clean. He'd washed it the night before, not to impress anyone, but because he didn't want to give anyone a reason to look at the truck, and draw conclusions about the man inside it. The Harmon Group occupied the top 3 floors of a building in downtown Raleigh with an atrium lobby featuring a waterfall installation that struck Elroy as deeply committed to making a statement. He gave his name at the desk, elevator to the 42nd floor. The office at the top was large, floor-to-ceiling windows on 2 sides. Raleigh spread below like a map. A clear fall day that made everything look clean and deliberate. Douglas Harmon was already standing when Elroy came in. 62 years old, but one of those 62-year-olds who moved like 50. Broad through the shoulders, gray at the temples. The kind of man whose handshake you remember. He offered it immediately, crossed the room, didn't wait for Elroy to come to him. Which Elroy noted. No Cass, no second man. Just Harmon and a young assistant who brought water and was immediately dismissed. They sat, not across a desk. Harmon had positioned 2 chairs at an angle near the windows. A conversation between 2 people, not a meeting between a man with power and one without. Which Elroy also noted. "I'll be direct," Harmon said. "I'd appreciate that. My daughter told me what happened, not what Cass summarized. Not what my security filed, what she told me herself." He looked at Elroy without evasion. "You stopped. You helped her. You asked for nothing. And when Cass came to your home with an offer designed to buy your goodwill and your silence, you told him no and closed the door." Elroy said nothing. "That's not a common response," Harmon said. "In my experience, maybe you've been talking to the wrong people," Elroy said. Something moved across Harmon's face, not offense, a point being registered. "Perhaps," he said. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, setting aside the formal version of himself. "I want to do something for you, Mr. Bennett. Not as a transaction, as a recognition of the kind of person you are. You don't know what kind of person I am. I know what you did. And in 40 years of business, I've learned that what a person does when there's nothing to gain tells you more than any background check." Elroy looked out the window. Raleigh from 42 floors. Cars the size of beetles. Streets in a grid below. "What are you proposing?" he said. Harmon laid it out. Money enough to clear Elroy's mortgage. Career connections. A new vehicle. The language was deliberately open. A blank line waiting for a name. Elroy listened to all of it without expression. When Harmon finished, the room was quiet, just the faint sound of the city far below. "No," Elroy said. Harmon waited. But Harmon's eyebrows rose slightly. He had not expected a but. "There's a community center in Cedarville," Elroy said. "I work there. It serves around 400 families directly and maybe twice that indirectly. The building is 31 years old. The roof has 3 active leaks. The gymnasium floor has been patched so many times it looks like a quilt. We have a waiting list for the after-school program because we don't have the space or staff for everyone who needs it." He paused. "And there are kids in Catawba County who are smart enough for college, who won't go because the money isn't there." Harmon was very still. "I don't want anything for myself," Elroy said. "But if the Harmon family wants to put there in something that actually matters, that's where I'd put it. A real renovation. A real expansion, a scholarship fund with enough in it to mean something. Every dollar publicly reported every quarter. And I decide how the money gets used. Not you, not anyone from your office." The silence that followed was a particular kind. The kind when someone redirects the entire current of a conversation and the room has to recalibrate. Harmon looked at him for a long moment. "You understand this is not how people usually respond on an offer like this," he said. "I'm not usual people," Elroy said. "No arrogance in it, just a fact." Another moment. "The Douglas Harmon something is unexpected." He smiled. "Not the managed version. Something smaller, more real." "No," he said, "not." They agreed on basic terms. Details would require lawyers and paperwork and time, none of which Elroy had experience with. But Harmon's word, offered in that office above Raleigh on a clear October afternoon, felt like the kind of word that held. Elroy drove home, called Dwight from the highway. "How'd it go?" Dwight said. "Fine. Fine, that's all I get." The Harmon family is going to fund the renovation of the rec center and a scholarship program for Cedarville students. A long silence. Cumma heard me, an even longer silence. Elroy, what? You went in there to say nothing, and you came out with, Dwight made the sound. Incredulous, slightly strangled. You walked into a billionaire's office and told him what to do with his money. I made a suggestion. And he said yes. He said yes. Dwight went quiet for a moment. Elroy, I love you like a brother, he said. But you are the strangest man I have ever known in my life. Elroy drove for a mile in silence. Call my mother before she hears it from someone else, he said. She's going to cry. I know. She's going to call you and cry at you. I know that too, Dwight. Just so you're prepared. He was not prepared. Loretta Bennett called him 45 minutes later, and she didn't cry immediately, which was worse, because she was quiet for a long moment after he finished explaining. The kind of quiet that meant she was holding something back and deciding whether to release it. And then she said very softly, Your father would have sat up straight when I told him this. That was what got Elroy. Right there on the highway, somewhere between Raleigh and Cedarville, with the sun going low and the trees on both sides of the road turning October colors. He kept his voice steady. Yes, ma'am, you doing this right? She said. You sure? I think so. You think so or you know so? I know so, Mama. A quiet, then. Come for dinner Sunday. And wear something decent. It's just dinner. It is never just dinner, she said, and hung up. The architects Cedarville 6 weeks after the Raleigh Hump meeting, on a gray November morning that smelled like coming rain. 2 of them, from a firm in Durham that Harmon's office had retained. They walked the rec center with Elroy for 3 hours. The gymnasium, the locker rooms, the meeting spaces, the small library room, with shelves that bowed under the weight of donated books no one had cataloged since 2009. They asked good questions. They listened to the answers. Elroy showed them the roof, the drainage problem over the east wing, the HVAC units running on stubbornness and whatever mechanical prayer looks like when applied to aging equipment, the back hallway where the floor had soft spots you learned to step around after your first week. He showed them the waiting list for the after-school program. Names on a clipboard, 47 kids. One of the architects, Jasmine, early 30s, who took notes in a shorthand that covered her entire notepad, stood looking at that clipboard for a long time. We can fix this, she said, not to Elroy specifically, confirming something to herself. I know you can, Elroy said. I need to know it stays fixed. She looked at him. The building has good bones, she said. We just need to give it room. Elroy thought about that phrase on the drive home. Good bones. His father's house had good bones. Some things were built to last. You just had to take care of them. The permits were filed in December, approved in January. And then, on a Wednesday morning in late January, they were not approved. They were on hold, which was different from not approved but felt identical when you were standing in the county planning office being told by a clerk who couldn't quite meet your eyes that a flag had been raised. Procedural review. Standard process. Nothing to worry about, the clerk said, in the particular way that meant there was something to worry about. Elroy drove home, sat on his porch in the January cold, thought. The flag had not been there 2 weeks ago. He'd called to check the status himself. 2 weeks ago, the permits were on track. Something had changed. He found out what in the way you find out things in a small town. Not through official channels, but through the texture of the place itself. Through Mrs. Addison at the diner, who had heard something from her nephew who worked county maintenance. Through Dwight, whose buddy ran the parking lot at the municipal building and had sharp ears. And finally through Dr. Paulette Okafor, the principal at Cedarville Elementary, who called one evening in early February and said, You need to know something, and I need you to not react the way I want to react when I tell you. Tell me, Elroy said. Mayor Aldridge had a private meeting, week and a half ago, with someone from the Harmon Group. She paused. Not Harmon, Cass. Reginald Cass, there it was, Cass. Not working for Douglas Harmon, working for someone else, or for himself. Thank you, Paulette, Elroy said. After he hung up, he sat in his kitchen for a long time. The coffee got cold. He didn't drink it. He was thinking about something larger than cold coffee and delayed permits. He was thinking about what it meant that the man who had shown us psramsp on his porch with a sprackpoint's paws and a designed piss paws had been running something of his own inside, the Harmon organization, and had been willing to use a community center. This community center, these 47 names on a clipboard, as a piece in whatever arrangement he was building. Elroy sat with that for a long time. Then he got up, rinsed the mug, went to bed. Because tomorrow was another day, and he had work to do, and the kind of problem Cass presented was not a problem that panic or anger solved. It was a problem that patience and clarity and the right next move solved. And Elroy Bennett had always been better at patience and clarity than almost anything else. The rumors started quietly. That was the thing about rumors in a small town. They didn't announce themselves. They didn't ever arrive at your door the way Cass had. Dressed up, polished, with a dazataz and a business card. They came through the back, through the side, through the spaces between things. A comment at the diner counter, a question at the barbershop. A headache at the hardware store from a man Elroy had known since elementary school. By the second week of February, Elroy could feel it when he walked into a room. Not hostility, not accusation. Something quieter and in some ways harder to address. Caution, the slight withdrawal of trust from people who had extended it freely for years. The particular way a conversation shortened when he entered it. The way Mrs. Addison still brought his coffee, but didn't linger the way she used to. He noticed. He was the kind of man who noticed things. He didn't say anything about it yet. Not to Dwight. Not to anyone. He gathered information the way he gathered information about a mechanical problem. Build a picture from the details before deciding what the picture meant. What the picture meant became clearer on a Thursday evening when Dr. Paulette Okafor called again. It's getting louder, she said, without preamble. She had never been a woman who needed preamble. I know, Elroy said. Aldridge is going to make a statement. I think he's going to formally request an audit of the project finances. Elroy was quiet for a moment. He can request one, he said. Everything is documented. I know that. A pause. But that's not the point. The request becomes the story. Cedarville Community Center, under financial scrutiny. That's the headline. And by the time the audit clears you, and it will clear you, half the people who read the headline will never read the correction. She was right. She was almost always right, which Elroy had learned over the years to accept with something between gratitude and mild exasperation. What are they saying exactly, he said. That you're fronting for outside money. That the Harmon connection is not what it appears. That a maintenance technician doesn't just walk into a meeting with Douglas Harmon and walk out with a community development deal without something behind it. A pause. The implication varies depending on who's talking. But the core of it is, we don't know what Elroy Bennett is really doing here. He set the phone down on the table for a moment without hanging up. Looked out the kitchen window at his dark front yard. The oak tree was bare now, February oak, just branches against the gray winter sky. He picked the phone back up. I need a few days, he said. Take them, she said, but not too many. He sat in his kitchen for a long time after that call. The coffee went cold. He left it. He thought about calling Harmon's lawyers. They offered to be stable since the beginning. A full legal team available if needed. 3 phone calls, and he could have the machinery of a large and expensive law firm turned on Aldridge and Cass and whatever arrangement they were protecting. It would be efficient. It would probably be effective. And it would tell everyone in Cedarville that Elroy Bennett needed outside power to defend himself. That when things got hard, he reached for the Harmon family's resources. That the deals was exactly what the rumors suggested. Something that moved in one direction only, with Elroy in debt to forces larger than himself. That was not what he had built. That was not what the 47 names on that clipboard deserved. He didn't call the lawyers. He called Dwight instead. Dwight answered on the second ring. "I was wondering when you'd call," he said. "You heard." "Elroy. My cousin's wife's coworker heard. Everybody heard. I need to think through something." "Then think. I'm here." Elroy laid it out. The situation as he understood it. What Cass was doing and why. What the audit request would mean and what the timeline looked like. And the choice in front of him: use the Harmon legal team and win fast and dirty, or find another way. Dwight listened to all of it. When Elroy finished, Dwight was quiet for a moment. Then, "You've already decided. Tell me why you think that." "Because you called me instead of those lawyers." "If you were going to call the lawyers, you'd have done it already." A pause. "So what's the other way?" Elroy had been turning it over for 2 days. "Open the books," he said. Dwight waited. Public meeting. Bring every document, every invoice, every contract, every dollar in and out. Put it on tables. Let anyone who wants to look through it. He paused. "I didn't do anything wrong. The only way to prove that is to show it. Not through lawyers, through the work itself." A long silence from Dwight's end. "That's either the bravest thing I've ever heard," Dwight said slowly, or the most naive." "Which do you think?" Another pause. Dwight said, "Definitely brave, possibly also naive, but mostly brave. That's what I needed to know," Elroy said. "Elroy. What?" "You know people are going to come to that meeting looking to tear you apart." "I know. And you're going to sit there and let them look through your finances." "Yes, without a lawyer in the room." "Without a lawyer in the room." Dwight made the sound. The specific, incredulous sound that lived somewhere between admiration and genuine concern for Elroy's sanity. "All right," Dwight said. "What do you need from me?" He called Dr. Paulette Okafor the next morning. "I want to hold a public meeting," he said. "First Baptist. Give it 2 weeks so word travels." She was quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do?" "Open the books, every document, print it, lay it on tables, let people come and look." Another silence. Longer. "Elroy," she said. "Yes. In 22 years in education, I have never once seen a man with something to hide invite a room full of skeptical people to look at his records." "No," he said, "because men with something to hide don't do that." She processed this for a moment. "I'll call the pastor," she said. The 2 weeks that followed were not comfortable. The rumors didn't slow down while he prepared. If anything, they moved faster, the way rumors do when they sense resistance approaching. Aldridge made his statement. Carefully worded. Nothing actionable, but the word audit was in it, and that was the word that traveled. Walter Greer, a freelance journalist who occasionally contributed to regional papers, started asking questions around town, not hostile questions, just questions. Which in some ways was worse than hostile, because hostile you could push back against. Curious was just there. Dwight fielded 3 conversations, 1 week, from people asking him directly what he knew about Elroy and the Harmon money. He reported back to Elroy after each one with the particular precision of a man taking careful notes at a confusing meeting. "Johnson from the warehouse thinks you made a private deal. What did you tell him?" "I told him to wait 2 weeks and come to First Baptist and find out." "Good." "Henderson at the gym thinks Harmon is using the community center for tax purposes. What did you tell him?" "Same thing. And Mrs. Patton." A pause. "Mrs. Patton thinks you hung the moon, and anyone who says otherwise is jealous." Dwight's voice was dry. "I told her to come to First Baptist, too." Elroy spent those 2 weeks printing. Every invoice, every contract, every materials purchase order, every labor cost breakdown, every correspondence with the Harmon Group's legal team, every email to the architects, the full scholarship fund setup documents, the projected operating budget for the next 3 years. He organized it into color-coded folders. Each category had a cover page written in plain English, no jargon, no financial language that required translation. The actual documentation was behind the cover page for anyone who wanted to go deeper. He also built a simple website. Or rather, Dr. Okafor's nephew built it in 3 hours for $40, because Elroy could maintain an HVAC system from 1987, but had strict limits when it came to the internet. The website contained everything in the folders, publicly accessible, no login required. The web address went on the back of every cover page. 2 days before the meeting, he sat at his kitchen table and looked at the stack of printed folders. 31 folders. Organized, complete, every dollar accounted for. His father had kept a ledger. Physical book, blue cover. Meticulous handwriting. Every household expense recorded. Every repair cost. Every month balanced to the cent. Not because anyone required it. Because his father believed that a man who couldn't account for his sores had no business managing anything else. Elroy looked at the folders and thought about the blue ledger. Same thing, he thought. Different scale. He went to bed. First Baptist Church of Cedarville held 400 people on a Sunday morning. On a Thursday evening in mid-February, Elroy counted 308 people as the pews filled and the folding chairs along the walls filled, and people stood in the back and along the side aisles. 308. He had set up 6 folding tables at the front of the sanctuary. Each its sets had stacked folders, organized by category. The cover pages faced out, the website address on the back of each one. He stood at the front and looked out at the room. Some of those faces he'd known his whole life. Some of them had been looking at him differently for the past 2 weeks. He could see it. The particular quality of agent people were watching to be proven right about something or wrong about something. And they weren't sure yet which one they wanted. He didn't use notes. There were no notes to use. I know why you're here, he said. You heard something. Maybe you believe it. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're not sure and you want to be. He looked out at the room. That's fair. You should want to be sure. This is your community. Whatever gets built here belongs to you. You should know exactly where the money came from and whereabouts it's business. He gestured at the tables. It's all there. Every dollar. You can sit down tonight and go through it. Take photos. Take the folders home. The website on the back of each cover page has everything in it. It'll stay public. It'll stay updated. He paused. I'm also going to tell you something I didn't fully understand until recently. Someone has been working against this project. Not because anything is wrong with it, but because of what the project doesn't give them. There's no entry point. No way to redirect the community's need towards someone else's political advantage. He kept his voice even, not angry, factual. I'm not going to name anyone tonight, because I don't need to. The documents on those tables tell the story clearly enough for anyone who wants to read it. He looked at the room for a moment. I changed a woman's tire on Route 9. That's where this started. I want you to know that's still where I'm standing. He sat down. For 3 or 4 seconds, the room was absolutely still. Then people started moving toward the tables. Then something happened that Elroy had not anticipated. A man in the 3rd row stood up before anyone reached the tables. 60, maybe a few years older, white hair. A press pass clipped to his jacket that identified him as Walter Greer, contributing journalist, Catawba Valley Register. The same Walter Greer who had been asking careful questions around Cedarville for 2 weeks. Mr. Bennett, he said, may I? He was looking at the tables, at the folders. Elroy looked at him for a moment. Help yourself, he said. Greer walked to the first table and opened a folder. He stood there, reading for a very long time, while around him, Cedar's residents settled into chairs with their own folders. The room filled with the specific sound of paper being turned by people paying close attention. Elroy sat at the front and waited. He was good at waiting. Greer found him afterward, when the room had largely emptied, and the folding chairs were being stacked by deacons moved with the quiet efficiency of men who had done this 10,000 times. I've been looking at Reginald Cass for 8 months, Greer said, without preamble. He had a reporter's directness, not rude, just economical. Different county, different project, same pattern. He looked at Elroy. What you've put on those tables is the connecting piece I've been missing. Elroy looked at him. "I want to write about this," Greer said. "The full picture. Not just the community center. The larger pattern." "I'm not stopping you," Elroy said. "Everything in those folders is public record. I know." Greer paused. "I wanted to tell you directly, as a courtesy." Elroy considered him for a moment. "When would it run?" 2, maybe 3 weeks. "I have to verify some things on my end. Cross-reference your documents with what I already have." He paused again. "It's a strong story, Mr. Bennett. Stronger than I thought when I came in tonight." "It's not my story," Elroy said. "It's the community's story." Greer looked at him for a moment, the look of a man recalibrating something. "Yes," he said. "That's what makes it strong." He picked up 3 folders, held them up in a gesture of acknowledgement, and left. Elroy sat alone at the front of First Baptist for a while after everyone was gone. The tables were still set up. Some of the folders had been taken. Most had been left because people had the website now. The church was quiet. High ceiling, old wood. The smell of candle wax and decades of Sunday mornings. He thought about his father, who had taken him to this church every Sunday until Elroy was 18 and could decide for himself, and who had never made a sermon of it or required anything of Elroy except that he pay attention while he was there. He had paid attention. He stood up, pushed his chair under the table, straightened the remaining folders out of habit, turned off the lights in the sanctuary, went home. Walter Greer's article ran 3 weeks later. Not in the Catawba Valley Register. A regional outlet picked it up first, and a statewide paper picked it up from there, and by the weekend it had been read by an audience sensibly larger than anything Cedarville usually generated. The piece was thorough in the way that only 8 months careful reporting could produce. It named Cass. It named the arrangement with Aldridge. It traced the pattern across 2 counties. It used Elroy's public documents, every one of them, properly cited, as the evidentiary backbone of a story that had been waiting for its missing piece. Elroy read it on a Saturday morning at his kitchen table. He read it once through fast and then once through slowly, the second time looking for errors or misrepresentations. There were none. Greer had been precise. Careful. He had not made Elroy the hero of the piece, and he had not made Cass a villain in the dramatic sense. He had simply laid out what had happened, step by step with documentation, and let the shape of it speak. The shape of it was damning enough. The permits cleared the following Monday. Mayor Aldridge issued a statement that same afternoon praising the transparency and community-centered approach of the Cedarville Community Center project, which was the kind of statement a man issues when the wind has changed direction and he needs people to believe he knew it was changing all along. Cass resigned from the Harmon Group that Wednesday. No press release, no explanation. Just gone. Elroy found this out from Dwight, heard it from someone who had it from someone else, which was the standard route by which information traveled in Cedarville. He was eating breakfast when Dwight texted him. He looked at his phone, set it face down on the table, picked up his fork, finished his eggs. Because the permits had cleared. The construction schedule was back on. There were 47 names on a waiting list and a meeting with the architects Friday morning, and a call with the scholarship committee after evening, and the East Wing drainage still needed attention before the spring rains arrived in April, and Roy Tesaro, the foreman Harmon's office had assigned, a man built like a defensive lineman who communicated primarily in single syllables, was coming by Tuesday to walk the site to Elroy before the crew mobilized. He had work to do. Claire called that evening. Not a long call. "I heard what happened," she said. "It worked out," Elroy said. "My father is furious with Cass." "Your father didn't know?" A pause. Short, but weighted. "That's a longer conversation," she said. "One I'd like to have in person, if that's all right. When things settle." "Things'll settle soon enough," Elroy said. "Are you all right?" He looked out the kitchen window. The oak tree was starting to show early green. Faint and tentative, the first suggestion of a season turning. "I'm fine," he said. "You're really not going to?" She stopped. Started again. Every time something happens to you, you go quiet and then you say you're fine. I am fine. You just went in front of 300 people and exposed entire financial life to public scrutiny because someone was using your permits as a political bargaining chip. 308, Elroy said. A beat. You count. I counted. She laughed. Small, real. The laugh of someone who hadn't expected to laugh. And Elroy almost smiled. Almost. I'm going to come to Cedarville, she said. When things settle, I want to see it. Construction's going to be loud through August, he said. Scaffolding on the east wing. Messy. I don't mind loud and messy. He thought about that for a moment. A woman who had grown up in Harmon money, learning to mean it when she said she didn't mind. Okay, he said. She said goodbye. He stood in his kitchen for a moment after the call ended. The oak tree outside was budding. March light on it. The kitchen was quiet, and exactly what it had always been, unchanged by everything that had happened around it. He put the phone in his pocket and went to check the back door weather stripping, which had been needing his attention for 2 weeks and could no longer be reasonably deferred. April came, and the construction began. Elroy was at the site every morning before the crew arrived. He would walk building alone in those early hours, the way a man walks through something that matters to him before the day's business of it begins. He noted things, wrote things in the small notebook he kept in his back pocket, asked Roy Tesoro about them when the foreman arrived. Their communication had evolved into a system of impressive efficiency. East wall framing, Elroy would say. Thursday, Roy would say. Pool drainage, done. The hallway floor. Roy would make a sound somewhere between a sigh and a confirmation that had taken Elroy 2 weeks to learn to parse correctly. Friday, Elroy would say. Roy would point at him. This constituted the entirety of their professional relationship, and it worked perfectly. The community watched. At first from a distance. People driving past. Slowing. Looking at the scaffolding on the east wing, the new framing taking shape. The way a building reveals itself when the work being done to it is the right kind of work. Then closer, then stopping. A man named Gerald Hutchins, whom Elroy had known since they were both 8 years old and competing badly at Little League, showed up one Saturday morning in April with a cooler of water bottles for the crew. Didn't ask permission, set it by the site entrance and came to find Elroy. Anything else you need, Gerald said. Elroy thought about it for a moment. You any good with logistics? I ran a regional warehouse for 12 years. Come Thursday. We're scheduling the electrical walkthrough, and I need someone who can hold a timeline. Gerald came Thursday. He came the following Thursday. He came the one after that, and then stopped waiting to be asked, and simply showed up, and within 6 weeks he had become indispensable in the specific way that people who are genuinely competent and genuinely care become indispensable. Not by announcing themselves, but by being reliably present and useful every time they were needed. He also, without any discussion, took over the project of filling the library room's shelves. He called every church in the county, every school, every used bookstore within 40 miles. He collected donations systematically, cataloged them in a spreadsheet that Elroy found impressive in its detail, and within 2 months had assembled enough books to fill every shelf in the library room with room for growth. He reported the final count to Elroy on a Tuesday afternoon in June. 2,314, he said, with the precision of a man who had counted twice to be certain. Elroy looked at him. You counted. Twice, Gerald said. He had also made a sign for above the library door. Simple wood, block letters, no decorative font. Read something. He showed it to Elroy one morning. Elroy looked at it for a moment. Where'd you get this, he said. Made it, Gerald said. You got a problem with it? No, Elroy said. I like it. Gerald nodded with the particular satisfaction of a man expected pushback and was mildly disappointed not to get any. Then he went back to shelving. By June, 12 community members were showing up regularly, not paid, not assigned, because the thing being built was theirs, And the meeting at First Baptist had made that clear to people in a way that no press release or dedication ceremony could have. They had seen the books. They had sat with the folders. They understood that this was not something being done for them by outside forces. It was something being done by them. Dr. Okafor set up a volunteer coordination system, a clipboard, a schedule, a group text chain that Elroy refused to join, but that Dwight managed on his behalf and reported on with the meticulous detail of a man who took his responsibilities seriously even when those responsibilities were technically unofficial. Loretta Bennett started coming on Saturday mornings. Not asked, not assigned. She showed up with her car full of pans and fed whoever was there, moving through the construction site's makeshift kitchen, a folding table with a camp stove, with the efficiency of a woman who had been cooking for groups, since before most of the volunteers were born. One Saturday afternoon in July, Elroy stood in the doorway watching her for a moment. She caught him looking, the way she had always caught him, at things he thought he was doing privately. "You've got dust on your shirt," she said. "I've been working. I know what you've been doing." I said, "You've got dust on your shirt." She handed him a plate. He sat down at the folding table and ate. She stood beside him for a moment, looking out at the construction through the open doorway. The scaffolding. The new framing on the east wing. Roy Tesoro 30 feet away, pointing at something on a wall, succeeding a sound that communicated approx 4 sentences of technical information to whoever was listening. "When you were 7 or 8, she said. "Mama, I'm talking, not unkind, just clear. When you were that age, you used to fix things, without being asked. A neighbor's fence post, the hinge on Mrs. Patterson's screen door. You'd just see something that needed doing and do it. Like it was obvious." He ate. "I never told you that was a good thing or a bad thing," she said. "I just watched you do it. Your father was the same way. That's where you got it from." She was quiet for a moment. "I just want you to know," she said, "that I see what you're doing here, and it's the same thing. It's the same little boy fixing a screen door that nobody asked him to fix." She patted him once on the shoulder, went back to the stove. Elroy looked at his plate, ate his food, and felt something settle in him that he hadn't realized had been unsettled. Some question he'd been carrying around about whether this thing he was doing was too large for him, whether he had somehow gotten out over his skis, whether the Elroy Bennett changed 10 tires on Route 9 and fixed screen doors and maintained a rank center that was almost too small for its waiting list, had any business being the person at the center of all of this. The answer, apparently, was yes. The same Elroy Bennett. Same person, larger scale. He finished his food, took his plate to the camp stove, went back to work. August arrived, and with it the full weight of a North Carolina summer. The construction crew worked through it without complaint, which Elroy attributed partly to professionalism and partly to the cold water. It appeared at the site entrance every morning courtesy of Gerald, who had expanded his supply responsibilities without announcement and without requiring recognition. The after-school program ran in the parking lot that summer. Tables under canopies, box fans, water. 31 kids who came every weekday, because their parents needed them somewhere safe and purposeful during the school break. Not 47, 31. Because 16 families from the original waiting list had moved during the winter and spring. Some to other counties, some further away than that. Economic pressure does that. It moves people. Makes them leave the places they know for places that might be slightly less impossible. And when people leave, the town loses something specific and irreplaceable. Something that doesn't show up in any census count. Some thread in the fabric that doesn't get noticed until it's pulled. Elroy thought about those 16 families often during August, on the drive in, on the drive home, during the quiet early morning hours before the crew arrived. He added a line item to the scholarship fund proposal. Not just college scholarship, Gypsy. Emergency family assistance. Small amounts. The kind that prevented a family from having to choose between staying somewhere they belonged and finding somewhere they could afford. He called it the Stability Fund because he refused to name it anything that made the people who needed it feel like charity cases. Stability. That was all. The ground under your feet. Dr. Okafor reviewed the proposal and called him that evening. "This is the most important thing you've done," she said. "It's obvious," Elroy said. "It should have been in from the beginning." "Obvious things usually are the most important," she said. "That's why people keep missing them." He didn't have an argument for that. The scholarship applications came in through August, 43 of them. Elroy read everyone himself, not summaries, not committee reviews. The actual applications. The handwritten ones and the typed ones. The ones with perfect grammar and the ones that said true things in the particular way. People say true things when they haven't learned yet to dress them up. A 17-year-old named Dion Garrett who wanted to study mechanical engineering, whose essay talked about the summer he'd helped his uncle rebuild an engine and understood for the first time that the way things worked was the most interesting subject in the world. Elroy read Dion's application twice, set it in the stack he was building separately, not labeled yes or no, but set apart from the others. He'd learned from 35 years of paying attention that some things needed to be held separately for a while, before you knew exactly what to do with them. He also read the essay from a girl named Priya Watts, who wanted to go to nursing school, and whose application described watching her grandmother receive inadequate care at a county facility because the family couldn't afford the alternatives, and she decided at 14 that she would spend her life making sure that didn't happen to other people's grandmothers. He read a boy named Keston Briggs, who wanted to study environmental science and wrote about the creek behind his childhood home that had turned a color it wasn't supposed to be, and how no one official seemed to care about it. He read all 43. Some things deserved to be read. Not categorized, not processed, read. By September, the interior work was finishing. The East Wing had classrooms, real ones, with whiteboards and proper lighting and a sound system that worked. The gymnasium floor had been refinished completely, not patched but replaced, and it caught the September light and held it in a way the old floor never had. Roy Tesoro walked the finished East Wing with Elroy on a Wednesday morning. They moved through each room without much conversation, which was standard for Roy and comfortable for Elroy, who had always believed that not every space required filling with words. At the end of the corridor, Roy stopped. The last classroom. Morning light through new windows, shelves along one wall, empty and ready. Roy stood there for a moment. Then he made a sound, different from his usual vocabulary of sounds. This one was specific. It had in it something that Elroy, after months of working alongside the man, recognized as satisfaction. "Good bones," Roy said. His voice was quieter than usual. "Yeah," Elroy said. "Good bones." Roy pointed at the empty shelves. "Books," he said. "Gerald's on it," Elroy said. Roy nodded once, turned, walked back down the corridor toward the crew who were finishing the punch list. Light switch covers in the East Wing, a section of baseboard in the main corridor. Small things, the kind of details that separated a finished building from a complete one. Elroy stood in the empty classroom alone for a moment. October was coming. He could feel the shift in the air, even through the new windows. The particular quality of light that September carried in its last weeks, warning and beautiful at once. He thought about 43 applications on the table in his spare bedroom. He thought about Dion Garrett and his uncle's engine. He thought about Priya Watts and her grandmother. He thought about the 16 families who had needed the Stability Fund before the Stability Fund existed. He thought about Route 9, 8 minutes, a lug wrench, a woman checking the road in both directions. You couldn't see from any one moment where that moment was going. You couldn't know. Standing on the shoulder of a count road at 7 in the evening with your hazard lights on and your hands on a jack, what the next year would look like, what it would ask of you, what you would find out about yourself in the asking. You just had to trust the doing of it. He turned off the classroom light, walked back down the hall. The crew was finishing up. Roy was pointing at the baseboard with the particular intensity of a man who had decided the universe owed him a straight line. Dwight had sent 3 texts that Elroy hadn't answered yet. Gerald was probably somewhere nearby doing something useful without telling anyone. The building was almost done, and then it would be open. And then the work would really begin. Elroy backed at an entrance, stepped outside in the September morning, and looked at the building from the front. Good bones, his father's words, really. Used to say that about old things worth saving. Not glamorous things, not famous things. Just things built with care that had lasted and deserved to last longer. The rec center had good bones. So did Cedarville. So, Elroy, did he? October came back to Cedarville, 1 year after Route 9. Elroy noticed it the way he noticed most things, quietly, standing on his porch at 4:55 with his coffee going warm in his hands. The oak tree had turned, not gradually, all at once the way his father always said it happened. One morning mostly green. The next morning the color of something deciding to burn beautiful before it let go. He stood there longer than usual, not thinking about anything specific, just standing in it. The cool October air carrying out something that smelled like wood and distance and the knowledge that things were changing whether you were ready or not. A year ago, he had driven home on Route 9 and seen blinking orange lights and pulled over. He drank his coffee, went inside, got dressed. He was at the rec center by 7. He walked every room alone before anyone else arrived. Not for inspection. Roy's crew had done the final walkthrough 2 days before, and the punch list was complete. He walked the rooms the way you walk through something that has cost you something real. To understand that it was finished, that it was real. The gymnasium floor caught the early morning light. Warm amber wood, seams, no patches, no apologies. He had stepped around the soft spots in the old floor so many times the route was muscle memory. He walked straight across. No detours, no stepping around anything, just across. He stood at the far end and looked back. Sometimes the small things were the large things. The East Wing classroom smelled like fresh paint and new carpet. The shelves along the wall of the largest classroom were empty still. Gerald had decided the ceremony should happen before the books went in, that people should see the empty shelves and understand they were about to fill them. Elroy hadn't suggested this. Gerald had arrived at it himself, which was exactly what this was supposed to be. Above the library door at the end of the corridor, the signs Gerald had built. Read something. Plain block letters. 3 coats of paint, 'cause Gerald Hutchins did nothing at 2 coats if 3 would last longer. Elroy looked at it, then went to check the library itself. 2,314 books. Gerald had to the final count with the precision of a man who had counted twice to be certain. The system had devised was simple enough for a child to navigate and thorough enough that Dr. Okafor had said it was better than 2 of the schools she'd worked in. By 9 o'clock, people were arriving before the ceremony even started. Parking on the street, walking up, running their hands along the brick on the East Wing. The kind of behavior that meant people understood something was theirs and wanted to confirm it. Roy Tesoro arrived at 9:30. He had never, in his career, attended a ribbon cutting, he told Elroy, and was not starting now. He had come because he wanted to look at a section of baseboard in morning light that had been bothering him since the final walkthrough. He looked at it for 30 seconds, made the sound of a man who had determined he was being unreasonable. Good, he said, meaning the baseboard. Then he looked at the main corridor, the new lighting, the refinished floors. Good project, he said. He left. Elroy watched him go and felt something that didn't have a simple name. Dwight was in the parking lot with 2 coffees. He handed one to Elroy without a word. They stood together watching the crowd gather near the entrance. "Lot of people," Dwight said. "Yes, more than First Baptist. Different kind of thing." A pause. "You nervous?" "No." Liar. "I'm not nervous about the speech. Because you don't have a speech. Because I don't need one." Dwight looked at him. "Elroy, there are people still parking 3 blocks away. I'll figure it out. The sound. The specific, incredulous sound that had been Dwight's response to Elroy Bennett's approach to preparation since the 7th grade. They stood in comfortable silence. The crowd was growing. Elroy found Dion in it, the boy standing with his mother near the East Wing entrance. Tall, very straight. His mother in a blue dress, touching his arm the way mothers touch their children when they're confirming, in real time, that the good thing is actually happening. His mother worked the night shift at the hospital linen service for 11 years, Dwight said quietly. Paulette told me. She thought you should know. Elroy looked at Dion and his mother. 11 years. Holding on to something that wasn't quite what it was supposed to be, because letting go wasn't an option. He thought about the stability fund, about the 16 families who had already moved, about the ones still here because they'd held on one more month, one more season. Loretta Bennett arrived in the car driven by her church friend. She emerged from the passenger side with the deliberate composure of a woman who moved on her own timeline. The blue coat, the good one. Elroy walked over. She looked at him, the full assessment. You look fine, she said. Thank you. I'm not complimenting you. I'm checking on you. She held his eyes for a moment. Whatever she found there, she accepted it. Good. She patted his arm. Find me somewhere to sit. These shoes are correct for the occasion and incorrect for standing. He found her a chair near the front, angled to see both the riser and the building entrance. She sat, straightened the blue coat, looked at the building. She had not been inside since the renovation began. She'd declined every offer he had made to bring her through at various stages. She wanted to see it finished, not in pieces. She was looking at it now, the whole of it, the new East Wing, the windows catching morning light. Her face went completely still. Not sad, not overwhelmed. The expression of someone finding that a thing's goodness, when encountered fully and at once, is larger than any expectation of it. She didn't say anything. Elroy didn't either. Then he went back to the work of getting ready. At 10:58, a gray rental car pulled into the far end of the parking lot. Elroy was talking to Gerald about the moving schedule when he noticed it. A corner of attention, logging it without interrupting what he was doing. Then he recognized the man who stepped out. Douglas Harmon. Alone. Assistant. Just a 62-year-old man in a gray jacket standing in a parking lot in Cedarville, looking at a community center like he was trying to understand what kind of place it was. Elroy excused himself, walked over. They met at the edge of the lot, far enough from the crowd for a conversation. Mr. Harmon. Mr. Bennett. Harmon looked at the building, at the crowd, back at Elroy. I should have called ahead. Probably. I wasn't sure you'd want me here. This is a public event, Elroy said. Anyone can come. Not warm, not cold, simply true. I need to say something, Harmon said. Then say it. What Cass did, I did not know. About his arrangement with Aldridge. About the permits. About what he was running inside my organization. A pause. I believed he was acting in my interests. He was building something for himself, using my name as the structure around it. For years, and I didn't see it. He said the next sentence flatly, without self-pity. That is a failure of attention on my part. Elroy nodded. He's gone, Elroy said. The permit's cleared, the building's done. Harmon looked at it, the East Wing, the crowd flowing toward the entrance. Yes, he said, quietly. It is. I appreciate you coming to say that in person, Elroy said, but you're talking to the wrong person. A beat. What do you mean? Harmon said. The conversation you need to have is with your daughter. Clear and steady. Not with me. I'm standing here fine. This building is fine. But Claire has been working for months to build something of herself on her own terms. And she has not returned your calls. He held Harmon's gaze. That is the conversation that matters, and it needs to happen between the two of you. Harmon was very still. I said, quietly, start with the truth, Elroy said, not the version that protects your position. What you did, why you did it, what you understand now that you didn't then. Those 3 things. A pause. And keep starting until she decides to listen. Harmon looked at him the way people look at things that are simpler than expected and harder than hoped. "Stay for the ceremony," Elroy said. "Back corner. Nobody's going to bother you." He walked back toward the riser. The ceremony started at 11:03. Dr. Okafor spoke first. Brief, specific. Numbers, names, contributions noted with the precision of a woman who had spent 22 years deciding what thousands of children needed. She named Gerald and his books. She named Roy Tesaro. She named the 12 regular volunteers. She named Dwight as the who had managed a community group text for 7 months on behalf of a man who refused to join it. Dwight from the middle of the crowd. It really did require patience, real laughter. The kind from people who know each other. Then Elroy stepped to the microphone. "No notes. I changed a woman's tire," he said. "Full stop. Let it exist. Route 9, about a year ago, October night. She was stuck. I stopped. Took about 8 minutes. I didn't think about it much." He looked at the building. "I'm telling you that because this," he gestured at all of it. "None of it started with a plan. None of it started with money or influence or someone deciding Cedarville deserved better. 8 minutes. Answer the instinct that was someone needs. Yelp, stop. The crowd was listening quiet. Every person who came on a Saturday morning. Every family that brought food. Every neighbor who stopped driving past and started pulling over. You all made the same decision. That this place was yours. That what happened to it mattered. He looked out at them. "I have been in rooms this past year with a lot of money and a lot of power in them. And I will tell you honestly, that is not where this happened. This happened here. In this parking lot. In First Baptist. In Gerald's truck full of book boxes." He stepped back. "Let's open the doors, Doctor." Okafor cut the ribbon, and people walked through the doors the way you walk into somewhere that belongs to you. He found Dion in the largest classroom, standing just inside the doorway, looking at the room, the whiteboard, the new lights, the windows letting in October light. Not moving further in yet, Elroy stood beside him. Neither spoke for a moment. "You start in January," Elroy said. "Yes, sir. Engineering building. Know you're coming. Not yet." "It will," Elroy said. Dion was quiet. "Then, why did you read all 43 applications yourself?" Elroy thought about the honest answer. "Because they deserve to be read," he said. "Not processed. Read. By someone who understood what they were actually saying." Dion nodded, then walked further into the room. Not pausing at the threshold, just walked in. Elroy noticed. Said nothing. Just noticed. He found Claire in the East Wing corridor an hour later. Flannel shirt, boots, a tote bag, hair in a ponytail. She looked like someone who had come to work. She set the bag down, took out a binder, handed it to him. Certificate of Completion, Nonprofit Management and Community Development, North Carolina State University Continuing Education. He opened it. 6 months of coursework. Every module completed between April and September. He looked up at her. "I wasn't sitting still while this was happening," she said. "I needed to do something useful. Not adjacent to useful. Actually useful." She paused. "I didn't want to show up here empty-handed. We need someone to run the scholarship program administration," he said. "The ongoing support. Following up with recipients through all 4 years. The Stability Fund applications. The community communication." He paused. "The pay reflects on a nonprofit budget." "I know, and I can't make Elroy." The way she said his name stopped the sentence. "I know what I'm asking for. I'm asking because I'm qualified, and because it matters, and because I want to do work I can see." He looked at her for a long moment. "Monday," he said, 8 o'clock. She let out a breath. Not dramatically, just out. Something held a long time being released. "Paulette runs orientation," he said. "She's thorough. I can handle thorough. She'll make you read the bylaws in full." "I've read them already," Claire said. "And your quarterly financial reports. All of them, since March." A small pause. Research. He looked at her, picked up his coffee from the windowsill where he'd left it. Cold. Drank it anyway. He thought was the library at 3 o'clock. sitting in the green reading chair, a book open in her lap, the afternoon light falling across the page and the blue coat. He pulled the other chair over, sat beside her. They were quiet together. Just the library, just the light, just read something above the door. Your father would have loved this room, she said. I know. He'd have been here every Saturday. You'd have had to send him home. You'd have had to, Elroy said. He didn't listen to me much. A small smile. No, he didn't listen to either of us. She turned a page she hadn't read. Dion's mother, she said. I talked to her today. She worked the night shift at the hospital linens service for 11 years. Moved here from Greensboro because someone told her the schools were better. Spent everything she'd saved to get here. A pause. And it wasn't quite what she'd been told. So she stayed and kept working and waited for something to change. She said it without particular emotion. Just the facts of it. The plain arithmetic of a life. 11 years, she said. And nothing more. Elroy sat with it. With what it cost to hold on to something almost right, because letting go was not an option. And what it meant that one building got fixed and one scholarship got built, and one boipu was going to walk into an engineering program in January and feel what his mother had been building toward for 11 years. A chain. He had understood it abstractly for months. Now he felt it. He looked at his mother. She was reading again, as moving across the page with the quiet focus of a woman who treated reading as the serious thing it was. He didn't interrupt. He sat with her in the afternoon light until the building grew quiet around them, and the day began letting go. Then he touched her shoulder lightly. Sunday, he said. Wear something decent, she said, eyes still on the page. I will. You always say that. He didn't answer. Walked through the building one last time. The gymnasium floor in the late afternoon light. The library with his mother and her book. The East Wing classrooms dark and ready. The bulletin board by the gym door that had 6 things pinned to it where there had been 3 that morning. Because things accumulate in places where people feel they belong. Dwight was in the parking lot when he came out. Leaning against his car, nowhere to be. Good ceremony, Dwight said. Paulette ran a good ceremony. You didn't do badly either. For a man with no speech, a pause. Mrs. Addison holds a piece of pot roast for you on Saturdays. Has for years. Keeps one back before they sell out. Oh, she told me once. Said she'd watched you stop for people your whole life and the least she could do was make sure you didn't miss the pot roast. Elroy was quiet for a moment. I didn't know that, he said. No, Dwight said. Because you're not stopping for people so someone holds pot roast for you. Simple. Factual. That's exactly why she does it. The parking lot was empty now. The building stood lit from inside, warm against the deepening October blue. Elroy looked at it for a moment, then walked to his truck. The drive home on Route 9 was quiet. He'd taken it deliberately. The same road, the same trees. The same water tower, freshly painted over the summer, Cesarvals, clear and readable in the dark. He drove the whole length of it without rushing. On the far side, he pulled over briefly, cut the engine, sat in the silence. The October night had settled in completely. First stars showing. Temperature dropping the way it does once the sun gives up. His father told him once, 12 or 13 years old, fixing fence posts after a storm. The thing about doing the right thing is that it doesn't always look like a path. Sometimes it just looks like the next thing in front of you. You do that thing, and then the next, and after a while you look back and the path is there. But you couldn't have seen it from the beginning. A flat tire, a woman checking the road, 8 minutes, a meeting 42 floors up, a public table with 31 folders, 308 people in First Baptist. A foreman with a vocabulary of single syllables. A man with 2,314 books. A boy who wanted to understand how things worked. A woman with a binders and something to prove to herself. A mother in a blue coat in an afternoon library. You couldn't see the path from the beginning, but it was there. He started the truck, drove the rest of the way home in the dark with the radio off, pulled into his driveway. Sat for a moment in the quiet. The oak tree was dark against the sky. He couldn't see the colors in the dark, but he knew they were there, the burning orange and amber, waiting for morning to show them off again. He went inside, made coffee, 2 scoops, black, nothing else, and set it on the counter for morning. Tomorrow at 4:55 he would take it to the porch, sit in his father's chair, listen to the birds and the pine trees and the highway waking up, the world coming back to life in layers. And whatever came with tomorrow needed fixing, whatever person was standing on whatever shoulder of whatever road with their hazard lights blinking. He would be there for the quiet part first. He always was.